Retention is the foundation of every single agency. You know what that solid foundation is built on? Communication. Emails are for information. Phone calls are for communication.
What is your process for retention? Like getting into the weeds a little bit, what does that look like?
I am telling you, phone calls play the biggest role. When we stopped calling our clients, our retention numbers dropped year after year after year. Everything we focus on at Paradiso Insurance is net new. So if a producer writes $1 million but loses 600,000, net new is 400,000. We don't care that they wrote $1 million. We only care about net new.
How do I make sure I am crushing my renewals? What is the first piece of advice that you give them?
Number one, you have to set up a strategy. You can't set that strategy up until you know and understand your clientele. What's your retention premium? What's your retention rate? And you're probably going to say to me, well, that's basic. Most people don't know.
Chris, I finally got you on the show, which I'm excited about. And where I want to kick this off is, and I'm excited because I have no idea where this is going to go. Tell me about last week.
Well, last week was a very interesting week that I've waited for quite some time. Last week, I was at Paris Island for the Educators Workshop. And anybody that knows and understands the military knows and understands that the Marines are pretty tough. I don't want to say the best because being a proud American, I love all branches. I will say I have a whole new respect for my Marine friends and my Marine family because in 4 days, I got a real experience of what it feels like to go through what the Marines go through, which, yes, they are recruits until they finish and become Marines, which is something called the crucible. And just being able to experience from being yelled at for 16 hours a day to running in high lifts and, you know, the confidence course and all these other unbelievably challenging things. I as a guy who works out every single day and who's physically pretty fit for 53, I was challenged physically, but I was extremely challenged mentally. And what the Marine Corps does to its cadets or to its recruits until they become Marines is absolutely amazing. And I never thought I would be able to experience a drill instructor that could literally strip me of everything within 3 hours. And I say strip you of everything you're marching, you're in chant, they own you, and not in a bad way. They make you Marines. When they say we make Marines, they make Marines. And I will tell you, by far, one of the greatest and most difficult experiences I've ever went through. And, you know, when you come to very difficult situations and things that make you very uncomfortable, nothing but growth comes from it. It brings you to a beautiful destination. I will tell you, I couldn't wait for it to end. I'm not a macho man to tell you, you know, when they say embrace the suck, I know that's a saying. Wow. That, you know, a lot of people say they have, the Marines have. I can assure you their training is unlike anything I've ever experienced. And I only had 4 days. And trust me, my wife asked me, so how does it feel? It feels like I visited hell and I stayed there for a few days and I'm happy to be back.
Why did you do that?
You know, there's certain things in life that I don't like when people say no fear. Remember those shirts, no fear? That's the biggest bunch of BS you've ever heard of. No fear? You have no fear? We all have fear. But the crazy thing about fear to me is fear is made up and it's pretend. It's 100% made up because there's people down there. I got to witness 300 plus Marines graduated. They became Marines. They feared, but they conquered their fear. And I can assure you, their fear was gone. So I don't like fearing things. I like to face my fears. I'm not going to sit here and tell you it was comfortable. It wasn't. I've never been bit by more sand fleas and screamed at and had PT because I touched my face because sand fleas were diving at me everywhere. It was an experience and a half. And I'm not willing to let fear stop me. I will tell you, there is it looks like like you're climbing down a mountain, which is this structure that you have to sit in a squat position and have your hands a certain way, and they lower you. It took me about 2 to 3 minutes to get the guts to go off that wall and allow one of the fellow Marines and instructors to do that. At the end of the day, when I got down there, I felt accomplished because I looked fear in the eyes. And I'm not going to lie to you, I didn't have to do it, but for me, I had to do it. It wasn't for the outside. That's why I did it. My very, very, very best friend, Ray Fallon, who's a Marine, when he called the office, he's a good client friend of mine. He asked Stephanie, why the hell would Chris ever put himself in that situation? Now, this is coming from a Marine. I wanted to say, well, Ray, why wouldn't you tell me that before I went? He said, I basically said, you're in for a treat and a half. And you should have figured that it was a very interesting treat. Unbelievable experience. Something I can say I accomplished for me, not for the outside world. But I also feel now I'm driven to advise, and hopefully everybody that's listening to this realizes how tough the Marines are. I promise you, when they say the few, they are the 1% of 1%. Trust me when I tell you what they go through. Very few people don't quit.
Oh, I bet. That doesn't surprise me. That part does not surprise me whatsoever.
At the end of the first day, I told myself 1,000, why am I doing this? Just walk away and you have nothing to prove to anybody. But I had to prove to myself. And that's it. It was terrible. I'm not going to sit here and tell you it was lovely. It wasn't lovely. It was terrible.
Well, you talked about, you're right. When you say about the not prove to anybody, I mean, I think most of the people listening to this show will have at least heard your name. If they haven't heard you talk specifically, with Paradiso Insurance, you guys have over 50 employees. You've won the Safeco and Liberty Mutual National Agent for the Future Award. You sit on the advisory boards of Rough Notes, 101 Weston Labs, and then I know a couple that are deeply important to you: the St. Padre Pio Foundation of America and Edelbrook. So there's no lack of accomplishments, both in the space and outside of the space. But an area today I really want to dive into, and I think, and I'll even share just in our conversation earlier, where you said specifically, when we're talking about, what do we want to dive into today? And you said real growth starts with retention. What does that mean?
Well, it's probably not going to be the most popular thing, but you need to lay a foundation. Your house is built on a foundation. Anything good sits on a foundation. Your own life, your own health sits on a foundation. Right? Everything that has a solid foundation builds up. And why I say that is because it's the most unsexy topic everybody wants to talk about. Hey, what are you doing with YouTube? I hear you're driving a lot of leads. Yes, we are. Great. People want to hear about that. But let's talk retention for a second here, or maybe even a couple seconds. Just stay with me. Retention is the foundation of every single agency. And let me tell you why. Because I had a friend who no longer is in the insurance space. He sold his agency. He figured out, he went about it, and he took a strategy, and it didn't work out very well. So he was out in the Vegas area. He realized that Vegas is such a glitzy, different, and the average agency out there, he said, was pretty boring. I was like, okay, boring to Vegas standard. So he ended up hiring Chippendales and male performers and got them licensed as agents. And I was like, that is weird. And he's like, no, there is a need for single women and divorced women to purchase insurance. I was like, that is interesting. I never thought about those demographics. Who has? I've never talked to an agent that actually said that. And I said, that's weird, but he's not wrong. He got up, he was running an agency. He was growing like banshees in the first year, second year. But what he realized and what he fell back on is the amazing thing that he was selling on is very good looking males selling to single females, that the retention strategy didn't work out very well. And I'll never forget saying his retention fell below 55%. And he's like, do you realize how much new business I have to be in an industry that is hyper focused on retention? Carriers come in, they always, this is your retention numbers with us. Yeah, absolutely. And he struggled. And he's like, I'm not sure I'm cut out for it. He ended up selling the agency for not very much money because there was no retention. But the retention strategy that we focus on is the start of our growth strategy. Why is that? Because what we realized, we were working with agency performance partners back in 2015, 16, when she first opened, and all the way up for about 6 years, up until COVID hit. And then once COVID kicked in for a few months, we decided, hey, we're going to take a little rest. We got a little lax, let's just say. And that retention strategy went from being very proactive to being very reactive. We got lazy. We truthfully did. And you know what happened to our retention numbers over the 2.5, almost 3 years that we stopped using agency performance partners? It dropped almost 10%.
That's significant.
It's not significant if you're a 300,000 revenue agency. It's not much. It's not bad. You can survive. But when when you're in the millions of revenue, 10% is a huge number.
I agree. I think that is significant. So here's one of the things I'm curious about is, what does this actually look like? What is your process for retention? Like, getting into the weeds a little bit, what does that look like?
We went back. We rehired agency performance partners, Kelly. She didn't reinvent the wheel. She came back and was reinstalling 80% of what she had. Now, has there been changes? Yes, because I think buyers have changed. She has made changes from 8 years ago. But it's amazing to get back to that solid foundation. You know what that solid foundation is built on? Communication. Emails are for information. Phone calls are for communication. I tweet that at least once a week. I say it at least once a meeting inside of leadership meetings, because we have to stop. Emails are vitally important, but emails are for information. If we need to communicate with our clients and with our teammates, it needs to be by a phone call or by Zoom or by whatever video conference tool you use. And why I say communication is we still use email. We still use a slide broadcast, which are drop calls. We still use that. We installed, and going back to 100%, we are going to place a phone call. Pick up that phone and have that communication with that client. It is critical, as some people say, is keeping the client sticky. Sticky means we're going to keep them around. If once they become not sticky, and I am telling you, phone calls play the biggest role. When we stopped calling our clients, our retention numbers dropped year after year after year. I can show it to you. They're in the numbers. I always say men lie, women lie, numbers never lie. It proved to me that, unfortunately, we took the wrong path. We did the wrong strategy. I'm going to sit here and tell you, Chris Paradiso has made a lot of business mistakes. And good agency owners are going to pick up that phone and call me and ask me, hey, what mistakes did you make? You know why? If you want to hear about all the good things, my grandfather used to say, all the good things somebody tells you is to stroke your ego. You know where the real learning starts? When people are honest and open with you to tell you what went wrong. What did you fail at? What did you stink at? What didn't you do well? That's where real growth comes from.
Here's what I'm curious about. So you mentioned the phone calls. Breaking that down a little bit, So emails are for information, phone calls are for communication. Makes complete sense. How, you're a big agency. You've got thousands, probably tens of thousands of clients. Let's just say households, between households and businesses, all get a phone call. Do you segment that? Is there a certain, if they're under a certain premium threshold, is this going to be used with AI, or what does this look like?
We tried it always. You know what works best? Calling all our clients every single year. That's what works the best. It's not sugarcoating. I know people say, but it's not weight bearing, or it's not financially, the right choice. My largest clients have come from some of my smallest clients. Sounds strange, right? We have a division we're the largest writer of FedEx parcel delivery in the United States. And it's amazing when some of the agents are like, yeah, I got this $300,000 account from a $25,000 account. It was a referral. That's the way the ball bounces, right? So we went back to calling everybody. We called AAA and AA. We didn't call single A. We dropped call. We were still losing. And you know what? What we realized, those single A clients, have we called? And then what is a single A client? We're not a big monoline agency. We feel that monoline actually hurts a client because they're losing discounts. If you have the home without the auto, you're losing a discount, right? There's multiple discounts you could end up losing, right? So that monoline business, and to think of it as just an A client, is wrong. What are we doing to pick up that phone to say, hey, Callan, I want to give you a call. Hey, we got your auto. Hey, did you end up purchasing a house? You were talking about, yeah, actually I did purchase. Great. I would love to be able to add some discounts to your auto. And how we do that is just bundling the two together. Not only is it better for you pricing, in a lot of cases, it could actually be better for you in making sure the liability doesn't get in a snag. And let me just tell you a quick story of a claim that we had between an auto and a homeowner's. The daughter was sat on the policy. They accidentally ran through the garage. Dog ran in front. Then there was a dispute between the carriers, different home and auto, and what actually took place. It's more complicated than we think of why we bundle. The liability wise, what happens if you back up on somebody's property and you're on your home? You got your auto with one carrier, home with another, and that neighbor ran in front of you, and you accidentally hit that neighbor in your driveway. What happens? Both liabilities could play a role, right? Imagine if it was one carrier and now they're not fighting. I just tell these stories because I've actually had these stories happen. The longer you stay in the business, the more you shake your head. You're like, you can't imagine the claims that we get. My largest claim ever, minus on personal lines, was an insured that was walking up the road about a mile from here, going to the high school to see his granddaughter perform in a musical. And he was struck by an uninsured motorcyclist who was under the influence of alcohol, narcotics, did not have a driver's license. It was suspended. The motorcycle was uninsured and unregistered. Both were killed. Uninsured and underinsured motorists, even though he was walking. And because there is no sidewalk, they gave some claim to that person. Thankfully, that gentleman purchased a couple $1 million umbrella, and that estate was sued, and we did the right thing. We had him properly insured, but somebody would say, did that really? It really happened. And thank God we covered that estate the way we covered it. Both his wife and daughter couldn't thank me enough because we did the right thing.
That makes sense. And what I'm hearing you say is whether it makes financial sense or not, you believe that it ultimately does because the A's can become double A's or triple A's. And whether it's from referrals or they just grow their business, doesn't really matter. They can get there. So yeah, maybe it looks on paper that you're not, it doesn't make as much financial sense, but that's not what it looks like over the long term.
It's not the standard of care. Let's just say that. Calling every client is not the standard of care. I might be rare. Do we find very many agencies doing it? No. I would also say to some people so if you go into McDonald's and you just want to get a kid's Happy Meal, And it's really not profitable because I don't even know what a kid's happy meal is. Maybe it's $4, $5, not it's cheap. Versus a regular meal that might be $15. Should they not sell it to you? Just because one's less than enough. So I changed my philosophy over the years in the senses of, hey, if you're not making money with something, I understand there's certain agencies that it's just not in our wheelhouse. It's like a heart surgeon. Hey, I'm a little slow now. I'm going to do your knee. That's not really the person you want doing your knee. You want a heart surgeon sticking to fixing hearts. But I think it's critical. The only way you're going to communicate is by picking that phone up. Yes, email still plays a role. You drip on them, and we're sending questionnaires. Has anything changed? Have you added a dog? Have you added any pets? That's for information. But the communication aspect is, hey, I got your questionnaire back from the email. I noticed that you added a dog. Let's just talk about this. Let's just look at your home liability. You don't have an umbrella right now. You have $300,000 of liability. I highly recommend you move that to $500,000. And if the carrier we have you, it goes to $1 million, we go to $1 million. And I highly recommend you to have an umbrella. And let me tell you, dog bites are the most common home claim there is that we see inside of our agency. And the average payout is north of $100,000. And God forbid, it's a small child that's injured. So it's all about education, and you can only educate people through good communication. Does that make sense?
No, it makes total sense. I get exactly what you're saying. And I do think one of the big things that's going to happen with AI is it is going to push people more in person, and relationships are going to be more important, whether it's you're making whatever that might be. But I like what you're saying as far as what you have found, objectively speaking, in your agency, is that going back to making phone calls has had a material impact on your retention, increasing your retention.
Because remember, you said growth, right? We talked about growth. If I retain 95% and I grow by 15%, I'm up 10%. If I'm back at 85% retention and I grow by 15%, I'm even. There's a huge growth starts with the foundation. The foundation is retention. But let me just say one thing in this type of market. It's vitally important that every agent hears this, especially the newer agency owners. First of all, we're in an unprecedented time, right? We're seeing personal lines and commercial lines. We've seen commercial lines stay flat. I have never been in the industry where I've actually seen decreases both in personal lines and commercial as much as I've seen so far this year. Actual policies going down. Why I bring that up is if you focus on retention, what happens if I keep you and your wife and your policies were 3,600 last year and they're 3,200 this year. My retention is going to say, oh, I'm retaining 95%. Every agency owner must be focused on retention premium. When you have a soft market as soft as it is this year, retention premium is just as important as retention numbers. Because if you don't lose a client, but premiums are going down, how do you make that up? First, you have to know that it's happening. And the only way you're going to know that's happening is by monitoring every single month. Monitor your retention premium. I wouldn't have told you that during COVID because what happened during COVID? In the last 2 years, this is what they did. So the last 2 years, especially going back the last 24 months, most agents, I made more money than I ever made before. Did you grow? Yeah, I took home 200,000 more than I took home the year before. That does not mean you grew. It's false. When premiums in a hard market go up by 30% and you made more money, that's not growth.
Yeah, you're not growing your policies in force. You're just growing the premium in a hard market. And then on the flip side of that makes sense. Your net retention is going to be lower because your net premium retention, if you will, is going to be lower, given that everyone's going down. And that's going to hurt. You are going to feel that on the actual bottom line.
But if you're not paying attention to it, I worked with a couple agencies, 5-6 years in the business. And, I said, nobody's talking about this because I don't know. I've certainly never seen anything like it. And most agency friends of mine that are 40 years in the business said, I've never seen a renewal go down. Obviously, I've seen renewals go down when you take off your twins that are no longer, kids anymore. They now are off the policy and the policy drops, but not when everything stays the same and the policy actually decreases, we have to pay attention to the retention premium this year. It's going to play a role in your bottom line and in the health of the agency.
So here's a question then. I mean, I'm assuming that the way that you're going to counteract that is you're going to put in a process to round out those accounts. Exactly what you just said. I love that idea as far as you've got questionnaires going out and then you're following up with a phone call. What I was curious about is when else do you make phone calls? Is that different by tier of client? And what does that look like?
Well, the number one thing we need to do is stop talking price and start talking coverage first. And I reiterate this when we talk with even when I sit with clients, it's common. Nobody ever asks me about premium at the time of a claim. They only ask me what's covered, how much is it covered for. So only at the time of a sale does price really matter. And I'm not saying that it doesn't matter at all. I'm just saying is, why are we treating this like McDonald's where, can I soup, you have a medium, can we move that to a large? I mean, even them at McDonald's are trying to upsell us. We are so focused on cost. We need to be 100% focused on coverage first. Let's figure out what gaps there are. And a lot of people realize the more we communicate, the more gaps there are. For example, we sell a gun liability policy. How many people have guns that are our clients? A large amount. Do they have liability for that? You realize that you can't purchase gun liability almost nowhere in the United States. It's so small where you can go. We have that. What do? Got to ask the right questions so that we can discover the right coverages or what should be offered. So the number one thing we need to do is really ask a lot of questions. We don't get a questionnaire back. We got to drill on questions. Did you add a dog? Did you add a pool? Pools are another huge liability risk. Why? Kids get injured. What's even a bigger liability risk? Trampolines, huge liability risk, right? What happens? Kids jump on those. Kids fall off, broken arms, broken ribs. It's the most common injuries that come from those. We have to ask the questions in order to understand where we're doing a good job and where we should be recommending coverages. Because we are a licensed professional, we should treat this like we are a doctor in the senses as we give professional advice. And we need to stay focused that we're professionals.
How do you make sure that it gets executed at the producer level?
Producer level, and there's two different aspects of a producer level. All of our phone calls are recorded and all of our phone calls are dropped in the management system. So that's easy to manage. We actually listen to every single phone call. We need to make sure every phone call is placed where it needs to be placed inside the management system. So we have an auditing system. So when somebody asks me about data, I can go on for hours because we rinse and repeat data all the time. We're auditing data every single day. Data is being audited. So monitoring a producer is easy when a cell phone or an office phone is being used. It's much more difficult when it's in person and they're off site. If they're inside the agency, a lot of times we will have a second person sit in and then we document the heck out of the account. But it's much harder when a producer is out and about. We have in-house producers that do nothing but sell. We audit that by every single phone call. And then what we do, we don't look to punish people. We look to educate our team. We're not looking to get people in trouble. We're looking on helping them. It's why you mentioned AI. AI is helping our team become better at what they do. It's not removing them of their jobs. It's helping them do a better job. We use a great AI tool that we utilize in every aspect of our agency called the Intelligent Agent. And it just is game changing. We even upload our policies. What weaknesses are in this policy? Within 30 seconds, it's telling us. We're reviewing our own work, which is instrumental. If you want to compete against me and I have that policy, I can upload your policy, that you might have versus what we're proposing. It's going to dissect the difference and what policy is better and why. That's AI. AI is not replacing me. It's helping me do a better job without me spending an hour reading both policies.
So, pulling back, and I tend to agree right now, at least in its current state, that it is an enabler and it could supercharge people that are using it. Where it's going to go, who knows? Could come for all our jobs, but I'm hoping not. But we have no idea, of course, where it's going to go. That said, pulling this back, you mentioned these different segments, AA, AAA. How do you, from a renewals and a retention perspective, do you treat them differently? Do you have additional touch points? Do you have more in-person touch points versus A's versus AAA's, or all the same?
No, it's not all the same. There's touch points in all aspects, AAA, AA, single A. But with AAA, our goal is to make sure we communicate with that client. What I mean by that is at least give 3 attempts on a phone call to get them. And in some cases, they don't call back. You might say, well, why are you spending so much energy? Because I know if we can communicate, which means talk to that AAA client, there's a good chance that there's something there. They added jewelry. They added a classic car. They're looking at a classic car. They're looking for a second home, third home. There are always additional opportunity there if we just maintain a good relationship. And the only way we can maintain a good relationship, in my personal opinion, is with communication. And communication is talking with that client. So we spend more time trying. So we call a AAA client, they don't call us back. We still feel we did our job. It's not what we want. We would love for them to call us back. We want the return phone calls. We get return phone calls, but we're going to spend a little extra effort going after those AAAs because we truthfully want to make sure we can talk with them.
So getting into the total weeds, you mentioned 3 attempts. Is that 3 attempts within, I'm just going to say random, a couple weeks? And then let's say they don't pick up on them. Are you aging that a couple months before you're reaching back out?
We're starting 60 days prior, and we start with an email stating that, letting them know that their renewal is coming up in the next 60 days. It might be 62 that we actually start. The goal is that we want to hit them with an email. We want to hit them with a drop call. Hey, just letting you know, we sent you an email. We're hoping that you get a chance to fill out the questionnaire. If you have any questions, please give me a call. It drops right into their cell phone.
Meaning a drop call this isn't going to ring their cell phone. This is just going to be a voicemail.
Yeah, some call it a ringless, some call it a drop call. Same thing. Yeah. The goal is can we get them before we even started calling? Can we get them to call us? Fill out the questionnaire and call us.
Yep, makes complete sense.
Then we start with picking up the phone.
So this all starts 60 days before. So everything is anchored to the renewal date.
Yes, it is.
Okay, that makes total sense. So once the renewal date's passed, is it just do you have things that are built in for that trigger a phone call, or is it just we're anchoring toward, we've got a ton of clients to make this honestly financially feasible. We've got to anchor to work our process that's anchored to the renewal date. Correct.
I mean, there's no other, one of the goals we have worked with is basically a 6-month check-in call. It gets a little difficult, especially with moving targets. And as we continue to grow, it's more clients, we're adding more staff, makes it a little bit more difficult. But the goal is between, a net promoter score, which we utilize, which if they respond with a 7 or an 8 or a 9, we pick up the phone if it's not a 10 and call you. Hey, we really appreciate you giving us the feedback. I'd love to hear more behind the feedback and how we can earn a 10 in the future. So our leaders of each department, that's their responsibility. So net promoter score plays a huge role. Once again, it's also a touch point. Yes, it might be an email touch point, but in most cases, it's a phone call touch point because we're picking up that phone if we got a 9 or an 8. Hey, most people would say an 8's great. They're not going anywhere. Not good enough. It's not a 10. It's like saying I almost won. Winning is a 10 to Paradiso Insurance. And if we get a 9, what we can do to earn a 9? What can we do to earn a 10? right? If we got a 7, how do we earn a 10? How do we get up to 8? How do we get up to we got to ask questions. Communication. I keep saying communication. Communication is picking up that phone and talking to people and then shutting up and listening to them. You got to hear what they say. Most importantly, after you listen to them, put into action what they tell you. They give very valuable feedback. When you stink, most people are willing to tell you why you stunk. Listen to them. Implement and fix what caused you to stink to begin with.
So on that, do you call the detractors as well? Do you call the ones and twos?
Every single one of them. If you want to sit in, we're on the EOS. Our L10 meetings are every Wednesday. Do you know our report card is all how many detractors, how many did we communicate, and what's the feedback? Every single week. People say, Chris, you're obsessed with that. I am. You know why? Because a bad client that's not communicated with is going to tell 10 people you stink. A good client who gives you a 10 is going to tell one person. I want to fix the 10.
It's so true. Here's what I'm curious about, and I agree with you. It's like, if you get feedback, you need to take action on it. How, I'm assuming you're getting pretty significant amount of responses back, just given how I'm hearing
Thousands a year.
Yeah.
Because we did something uniquely different. A lot of people say, we get, maybe 1 out of 10 that go out. So what we do is we have a handwritten note card and we give them a $3 Dunkin' Donuts next cup of coffee's on me. So we have been doing it for years where it has gotten them to respond to us. Even if we get 10s, I don't care. But most importantly, that gift card is going to get people to speak up. And when we're not performing well, we can't fix what we don't know isn't working well. Once again, everything we're discussing right now is all about retention. Retention is the foundation of growth. I'll rinse and repeat that 1,000 times. You want to talk about what we're utilizing for technology to drive new leads? That's great, but it's not as great as retaining. If you can retain more business, growth is easier. And in order to grow higher, you need to grow less because you don't have to make up. Everything we focus on at Paradiso Insurance is net new. So if a producer writes $1 million but loses 600,000, net new is 400,000. We don't care that they wrote $1 million. We only care about net new. That's what we focus on.
So you mentioned EOS, and part of that L10 meeting is the issues list, and I'm assuming that issues list is primarily comprised of the feedback that you're getting, or at least there's probably a decent amount.
No, the feedback goes on our report card. So we have a report card of how many new quotes we took in, how many referrals we got, how much new business we wrote, how much business we lost. Also, net detractors, how many downloads of the app that we have, because we feel that the app is a very, very critical part of the customer experience. So those are all things that are on our report card.
So with all of this feedback, how do you prioritize? How do you decide? Because you can't work on everything because you're getting tons of feedback. Don't get me wrong. I'm sure this is 80-20 and a lot of this is probably hitting on similar things. But how do you decide and prioritize?
There's only 5 things. One thing was, hey, you weren't open on Saturday. Well, we opened years ago on Saturdays because we heard that we want to pick up our car on Saturday. We have hours now, unless if it's a holiday weekend. We're open on Saturdays. It has played a vital role. The biggest thing the last 24 months is, I love your service and everything's great, but the premium keeps going up. Some things are just out of our control. And we can still have and explain and talk about the industry and what's taking place and why rates are going up. It doesn't fix everybody. It doesn't solve, but at least we can address that. There's not much we can do. During that 24 months, if we reshop somebody, we could only move them less than 11% of the time, which meant 99% of the time we were wasting our time because the rates were the rates and, it was just a hard market. But we could still communicate with the client and still talk about some of the rate increases and why they were taking rate increases and talk about why the market was hard. It doesn't solve everybody, but we are having those hard conversations. And without the net promoter score, you're not going to know why people are upset with you. The third thing is I would love the turnaround time to be less than a half an hour. We hear that, or less than an hour. People want instant gratification. So now what we've gone to this year is it's called the same call resolution. While the person is on, we don't take notes. We take notes in the management system while the client's on, and we solve it while the client's on the phone. We don't say, hey, I'm going to pick up the phone, I'm going to call the carrier, and I'm going to get back to you. It's not what we're doing. We're going to keep that client on the phone. We're going to call that carrier in and bring that carrier on while the client is on the phone, and we're going to walk through and resolve it right now. It's called the same call resolution. It works. It's hard, but it works.
Does that impact the carriers you ultimately decide to work with?
Absolutely. Why is that? Because if you're on hold for 45 minutes, it's tough. It's tough on the client. And it's important to educate them. Hey, the reason why it takes some time, 2-3 hours for us to get back to you is we're on hold for 50 minutes. You see, I just listened to a call a couple of weeks ago. They were on hold for 53 minutes. So the client says, geez, your job's a lot tougher than I expected. I would have never expected. I figured everything was online and it was instantaneous and it just worked.
So Chris, one of the questions I'd love to ask is, you mentioned that this is excellent. You gave real examples. I've still got like a million more questions, but you mentioned that and I've heard this, I can't tell you from how many different agencies said that they've flown out to Connecticut, they've met with you in person, you give back a ton to the industry, which I've got a ton of respect for. When you're coaching somebody on this, they're coming to you, let's just say this is one of those newer agencies, and they're asking, how do I make sure I am crushing my renewals? What is the first piece of advice that you give them?
The first piece of advice is, number one, you have to set up a strategy. And when you set up a strategy, you can't set that strategy up until you know and understand your clientele. What's your retention premium? What's your retention rate? And you're probably going to say to me, well, that's basic. Most people don't know. When you ask somebody, everybody tells you, oh, I retain 99%. It's not true. It's impossible to retain 99%. You know why? People move out of state and people die, and that's about 4 to 5% of everybody's book.
Oh, that's interesting. I've never heard that stat. That's interesting.
That's why we write in 44 states and continue to write in more and more states, because we hate losing that client we built a great relationship with that's moving from Connecticut to New York, or Connecticut to Tennessee, or Connecticut to South Carolina, North Carolina, Florida. So understand what your numbers are. I said it before, men lie, women lie, numbers never lie. Understand your numbers. Understand your audience. Understand your clientele. Then build your strategy. Strategy is vitally important. A lot of people say they can do it on their own. I challenge people. There's a reason why we go to a professional heart surgeon, because you want the best. I've hired and I've spent money, and a lot of people are like, I'm not afraid to spend money. I'll spend money hiring the best. I mean, Kelly at Agency Performance Partners has been the best. I mean, she's proven it to me. My numbers have proven it because she has worked with my team. So, I mean, don't be afraid to spend that money and hire help. I'm good at a lot of things, but I'm not good at a lot of things too. I'm not afraid to do them, but why would I not want to work with that person? And if I could hire the best, hire the best. Maybe it's Roger Stickens with your producers. Maybe it's, we use Peggy Corbett within Hawksoft, whoever it might be. We hire people who are the best at what they do, and we bring them in. We have multiple people we work with. People say, you're spending money. I'm spending money because I want the best. I want the best training for my team. I can demand the best if I give them the best training. Too many people demand the best and they don't spend any money or any time or any energy investing in training. How can you do that? You can't blame your teammates. You need to invest in them.
That's probably one of the biggest recurring themes that we have on this show, is not being afraid to hire and bring in experts within their particular areas. Chris, last question I got for you.
Can we just stop for 1 second before it goes? I'm not a consultant. I don't get paid. Agents that reach out to me, I don't ask for any money. I'm not a consultant. I'm not looking to make money. I love the industry. I love agency owners. I love producers. Anything I can do to give back to the industry. I got Jackson Rollo coming out, who is, if you're not following him, he is the future of independent agents. I'm telling you that. Jackson Rollo is the real deal. Brett Merrill out of Florida, he's the real deal. Those people you should have on your show. They're doing things differently, and they're not afraid to, they're investing in their team. They believe in leadership. They believe in growth, but they're investing in growth. And that's the difference. There's some special people out there. And I challenge people, hey, come spend a couple days. Come spend one day with me. We're not looking for anything other than, hey, can we open your mind to challenge you to become a better leader, challenge the way you're thinking? I was fortunate. I had a mentor in the industry that invested in me, and that's my way of giving back. He said, oh, what the best thing you can do is share with other agents. We're in this together. We're not competitors.
Well, I can, and that's probably a perfect place to wrap this up, because I can 100% attest. I've heard this from multiple agencies, so I'd highly encourage our agents, any of the agencies out there listening, to take you up on that. You might be surprised. And the stories, when Lyndon's episode, I believe, is coming out next week, and he tells the story of him coming and staying on your couch, and it's fantastic. So, Chris, thank you for taking the time to come out today, man. This was excellent.
My honor.